Hey y'all, and welcome back to a new video. Today we're going to be looking at a chess game that I played recently where I managed to show how the London system has attacking potential and how it's not really that boring of an opening. My opponent is a 2250, so a little bit more low rated, but it's still a very strong opponent, and you have to give these people the credit they deserve. Alright, let's hop into the chess. I start off the game with pawn to d4, and my opponent goes with pawn to e6. This is a way to play in the early opening. Basically, it's just saying that you want a French. That's all this is saying. You just want a French. But the problem with these positions is I don't want a French because I don't enjoy playing against them. I could also play a move like knight c3 and do something else, but I'm just a big fan of playing this move. Give me a second. Sorry, I don't have the notation on this game. There we go. Now we have book moves and everything. Alright. I'm not a big fan of playing into the French just because I don't really know the theory in it. I don't really want to play for it. So whenever this happens, I normally just play the move bishop f4 and allow my opponent to go back to an opening that I know, namely the London system. Or if you want to be a little bit spicy and like not play the move pawn to d5, you don't have to. But I don't think that's that good of a response. But my opponent goes pawn to d5, and we have ourselves a London. Pawn to e3 and bishop d6. This is an idea in the London. Basically, you just want to try and trade off this dark squared bishop as fast as possible. And in these positions, I used to play this move bishop back to g3. Which is an option. The point is that black can't really take because you're opening up the H file, and white is just getting a slightly better position with moves like bishop d3 and bringing the pieces very easily over to the king's side. But in this game, I decided that I was going to be a little bit inspired today. I just been watching a Taught us Steel recap, and I was looking at this and I was like, wait a second, I want to do what those players did. I want to play the position with keeping the bishop on f4, which is something that I don't normally do, but I thought I can probably do it for one game. If he takes, we get into some interesting positions. If he doesn't take, I kind of still know what I'm doing. So I instead play the move knight to f3, which is a move, and if he takes me, we enter these positions, which I was excited for. I was really hoping we would go here just because I wanted to try these out. Unfortunately, he doesn't take. He plays the move knight f6. And I decide after a little bit I'm going to play the move bishop to d3. Keep my bishop on this diagonal. I'm keeping the option open for him to take my bishop at any time. Simply saying that I want to go into these structures. My opponent goes pawn to c5. And here I got a little bit nervous and I played a move I probably shouldn't have played. I was worried here that if I was to play the most natural move, pawn to c3, which makes a lot of sense, I thought now my opponent could probably take an f4 and then take, and I really didn't want to put my knight on d4. I really didn't like this position. I thought my knight on d4 was a bit off the right square. The knight wants to be on this square and these structures, and if I took with the c-pawn, I thought that now I'm just going to be playing for nothing, because now we just have this perpetual weakness. There's not really much to play for, and black has easy developing play with moves like knight c6 coming after it, and I just thought that if anyone's better here, it's probably going to be black, since I have the weakness and black's position is kind of getting into the game. I guess this bishop, you could say, is not, but I wasn't thinking like that in this case. So I thought for a little bit, and I didn't play the move pawn to c3. I was worried about these lines, and I decided, okay, I'm going to take on d6, which is fine. This is fine. My opponent's going to recapture, and now I'm going to simply play the move pawn to c3, and now if my opponent takes, this would just be a bad move, as I would be taking back with the e-pawn. I have this open dark squared diagonal for my queen in some lines. His bishop is still bad. His bishop doesn't really have a way to get out. My knight's come in here. I might go queen e2, and the plan for white is very simple. I was hoping for this position. Of course, I didn't think my opponent was going to play into this because my opponent knows a thing or two about chess, and I thought that that would have been very silly to take on d4. So instead, my opponent goes knight to c6. Now I could castle in this position. Obviously, castling is the most natural move, but I thought that castling didn't make the most sense here. I thought the best move was the one I played, which is this move knight bd2. And this is very simple. I just need to get all my pieces developed. There's no imminent danger towards my king. Like, you can't start a crazy initiative here with black. White can castle at any time, so it's more important to get your pieces out than to castle now. It's just a little bit of a beginner knowledge, but it's something that like really anyone can use. And if you like forget that, then it could be a problem. But anyway, I plan to move knight bd2. Very simple idea. I'm defending this square. I'm developing a piece. Maybe I want queen c2. Maybe I want queen b1, bishop c2 after c5. Get something over there. Maybe I want bishop b1, queen c2. Ooh, some attacks. And I was looking at this position, and I was like, okay, I'm kind of vibing here. My position is all developed. Now I'm gonna put the rook on c1. I'm gonna castle. I'm gonna put the rook on e1, and we're gonna have a game. The light squared bishop is still a bit misplaced, and my opponent makes a really big positional mistake here. He takes on d4, which is the move that I just said probably shouldn't be played. If I was black, what you should really do here is you should castle. You should just keep the tension. You should go rook e8 and play for this move, pawn to e5. This is the break you want, because this opens up the light squared bishop. This kind of opens up black's whole position. And after d takes, black is going to have the center control and control these squares very nicely, with my knight not being able to go here. Of course, I'm not going to be allowing my opponent to do that. White's going to be playing for a move like knight e5 at some point, try to get control of this e5 square before your opponent can play the move pawn to e5. But really, that's what black should be doing. That's how the London has always been played. Even if you're a little bit like unsure of yourself, you can even play like a random move, like probably either a6 is fine or h6 is fine here, and you just kind of keep some positional play as black has a little bit more space than white. Black has a little bit more space than white because this pawn is kind of fighting for the center, and I only have one pawn. But those are some nuances. Instead, my opponent takes on d4, which is a huge mistake, and I immediately recapture with the e pawn. Of course, this is very logical. And now white kind of has full control over this e5 square, and to play e5 now with black would probably be a pretty large mistake, because e5, first of all, knight takes e5 is a very strong move, because you can, I guess, pin. Yeah, but okay, even not tactically, even if we're thinking not tactically, let's just say takes, bishop e2, castles. Something like this. Even not tactically, this position isn't really what black wants, because this pawn is just a weakness. That's all. That's basically what black is saying, is that he's not going to play e5 anymore, because he would just be making this d5 pawn a huge weakness in the center of the board. And I was kind of shocked when he played this move, but I mean, he is 2250, and I was kind of getting some confidence back. My opponent castles. I simply decided to castle myself. I thought this made the most sense. I need to get this rook in the game. All my pieces are developed to the squares they want to be, and my next step is to get this knight over to the e5 square. Bishop d7. Another move that doesn't really accomplish much for black. I think black probably... Computer gives e5, which, yeah, you probably have to play that at this point. It's just not very good. Like, the position is still very active for white, and white has a very pleasant game, but this kind of has to be what you have to play, because I don't really see what other way this light squared bishop is getting out. Like, this light squared bishop is just trash if you don't play e5, and I'm just about to shut you down with the move rook e1 and knight e5. So it seems like black is like one move away from getting into a bad position. Maybe you can play rook e8 here. Maybe you can get away with this and then e5, but this already seems very bad. Yeah, there's already like some tactics here. If takes, I guess queen e, no, not queen e2. Rook takes e5 here, and then I play the move knight c4. Yeah, this is very nice. This is very nice. Takes, I have bishop h7, and I win the queen. Some nice tactics. But you kind of have to watch out for stuff like that when you look in positions like these, because I mean, everything is like loose for black. It's very rough. So bishop d7, I guess, is okay if you're looking at a lens that is better than rook e8, but I still really am not a fan of bishop d7, as it allows me to control the entirety of the center with the move rook e1. And now white's position is coming alive. There's not much to do, and I'm going to play this move knight e5. And after knight e5, my pieces are really well placed, and white can almost do whatever they want, which is going to be shown later in the game. My opponent goes pawn to a6, which is definitely what black has to do at this point. Well, this is what black has to do at this point. There's not really much else. The computer has given knight h5. I don't really know what this move does. I mean, like here, bishop f1. What's the big plan here? This doesn't look good for black like at all. I don't know. It just seems like the knight is misplaced. I guess the knight's going to g6, but this just seems ridiculous. I don't know. I don't even know what we're calculating. Instead, a6 is a much more logical plan. The idea is black wants to create counterplay on the queen side with move pawn to b5 and pawn to b4. And if I'm being honest, in this position, I didn't really understand how much better I was. First of all, I did put the knight on e5. This is obviously the best move. This is where the knight wants to be. You can't take with a knight because, of course, we have this classic London fork. So my opponent just has to suffer with the knight. And my opponent decided, okay, there's not much else to do. I'm going to play the move pawn to b5. And here I just make a really big mistake. I didn't understand how good my position was in this moment. I kind of played what I did by hand. If I had thought about the position for like half a second more, I would have realized, wait, black is trying to play b4, right? That's like his one bit of counterplay. If he doesn't have b4, what does he have? Nothing? Okay, then I play a3, and there's just nothing. Black has nothing. But for some reason, I didn't think like this, and instead I played this move, knight df3, like very quickly. Like 4 seconds. Yeah, very, very quickly. I played this move, knight df3. It's not a good move. It's really not a good move. I shouldn't have played this move at all. But I mean, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? It's a rapid game. I'm playing down. I'm not really too in the best frame of mind right now. So okay. I mean, knight df3 isn't awful. It does lose all my advantage, but white is still a bit better. And my opponent goes b4, and I realized my mistake almost immediately. And I'm like, wait a second. This is ridiculous. Why did I allow this move b4? What am I doing? What am I doing allowing b4? Am I stupid? Am I stupid? The answer is yes. And I already kind of have to keep my position and kind of just hold it at this point. I was considering like blowing things up with a move like c4, but I feel like c4 does more harm than good. Actually, c4 is okay. That's ridiculous. I did not think c4 was okay. I thought this move was like interesting, but I didn't really give it any merit. I thought bishop takes, and like I'm gonna try and get rid of my weakness somehow. Like I'm gonna try and play for this move. Like in the future, I'm gonna go queen d2, rook e1, and play for this move. And I didn't think this pawn would be too much of a weakness because this light squared bishop is in the way. But I just kind of wrote this off as being insane. Actually, even the better move here is knight takes c4. It is not something I realized, and the point is here is obvious. Like I get a fork, so the queen has to probably come back. And then it's kind of, it's a very interesting position. Very, very interesting position. Maybe queen d2. I like queen d2, rook c1, bishop f1. I still want to play this move at some point. Maybe I'm going to put the knight here at some point. Go off in the c file. This is very interesting. Honestly, I would have rather played that position than the position I got in the game. But okay. I ended up playing the move queen d2 immediately, which in fact does lose all my advantage. What I'm supposed to play is rook c1, get onto the c file before my opponent does, and continue to just play like nothing happened. If you take, I can take with either the pawn or the rook. Computer likes the rook. I don't know, the pawn seems kind of reasonable just to play with c4 myself. But okay, it doesn't really matter. Queen d2 was played in the game, and my opponent takes the pawn. I decided to take back with the pawn. I thought this made the most sense. Taking back with the queen doesn't make as much sense because now I'm leaving this pawn isolated, which is not something I wanted to do. Of course, having an isolated queen's pawn in many lines is okay, but I'm not a fan. So I decided not to go for this, and taking back with the pawn here allows me to play the move pawn to c4 in the future and start chipping away at the black center. Also, this move restricts the knight. My opponent goes rook f8. And here I had a touch of genius, and I play a very, very nice move. Throughout the game, I'm looking at this position. I'm looking at this position. I'm like, all my pieces are developed. Maybe a little bit earlier. Maybe like here for example, I'm looking at these positions, I'm looking at, and I'm saying, well, all my pieces are developed. I have done pretty much everything that I'm supposed to do. And it seems like most of black's pieces are on the queen side. This rook is hardly a defender of the king. This knight is the only really one. And it looks like all of my pieces are pointing to the king side with this rook e3 idea. So even back here, I was thinking about this idea to play g4. And the point of g4 is that I'm simply going to go g5, bring the queen in, go rook e3, bring the rook up, and just win. That's the entire idea of this move pawn to g4. And it's actually ridiculously hard to defend because you still can't take this knight. You can never take this knight because of this fork. So you have to move the knight back, let's say knight e8. And I mean, like, already my position is very good. But here it's a little bit rough because I have to continue with this move. I would have loved to play this move pawn to a3 earlier, but now it's a little bit slow. So I didn't go for it then. But in this position, I go for it. Pawn to g4 on the board. And it's getting really, really scary for my opponent. I don't really know what he even does at this point, because it's honestly if I had this position with black, I would not think at first glance that it's plus 0.2. I mean, it really feels like white's whole position is coming down at the black pieces, and it's just going to be game over. It feels like it's going to be checkmate in like 10 moves. And in the game, it got very bad very quickly. But the engine defense always astounds me. Like moves like bishop e8, g5, knight 8, knight d7, not knight d7, knight h5 to stop queen f4. And then you kind of take some position like this. I don't even know. How do you even... Oh, I guess it's actually very difficult to keep going here. You would want this knight to be on a different square. Maybe move like pawn to h4. Already knight takes e5 here, and this is a good position. Okay, I don't know anything about chess. But I thought this was very difficult to defend, and my opponent immediately makes a mistake. I thought that I was under the assumption that in positions where you're being attacked, the most logical thing to do is to not touch any of your pawns, because your pawns can be hooks for your opponent, and my opponent shows how this can happen very easily while he plays the move pawn to h6. And pawn to h6 loses the game immediately, because it gives me a hook to go after with my pieces. And immediately the move pawn to g5 is natural. It's a very, very easy move. My opponent can't really do anything about it. He has to take. If he moves the knight somewhere, then I will be taking him. And that's going to be a whole lot worse, because then the queen gets in. I'm going to go king h1. I'm not even going to go rook e3. I'm going king h1, rook g1, and checkmating him on the spot. There's really no way for my opponent to survive these positions. And I was kind of getting hype. I was kind of getting hype at g5. I was like, okay, this is going to be easy. I'm just going to win with no trouble at all. h6, g5. Here I have to think for a while, because there's two moves that make sense. The two moves are very obvious. Either queen takes g5 or knight takes g5. I thought about queen takes g5 very briefly, because I thought, oh, I'm going to go queen takes g5. And like the point is, I'm now going to go queen h4 and get onto this h file quickly and then have threats like this. But then I'm just like, wait a second. Knight g5 is just more forcing. Knight g5 is more forcing. I'm attacking the f7 pawn, and I can always go queen f4, queen h4 like this. And actually, knight g5 is just what I'm going to play anyway, because I'm going to have to go rook e3 at some point to bring the rook over. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to take back with the knight. This is the best move. Actually, queen g5 loses a lot of my advantage, because this is less forcing. I'm not attacking the pawn. I'm not forcing the move bishop e8 or rook f8. He decides to go with bishop e8, which makes a lot of sense because the bishop's kind of doing nothing, and this allows the square for the knight to come back. And I decide to play the most natural move without very much thinking, and I play this move queen f4. And already you can see in this position from like a quiet-esque London system, how white is able to expand and just obliterate black with no real try. This is a good player. This is a 2250. This is top 0.1% chess.com. This is 99.9 percentile. And they just have no idea what to do against these ideas of g4 and g5, where I just get a winning position. But okay, let's see how we actually manage to win the game. My opponent goes queen e7. This move makes a lot of sense. He's trying to bring the queen back. He's getting out of the way of some pins, some ideas on the queen over there, and now he might want to take the knight because now this wouldn't be a fork anymore. That's a very reasonable move. Play the move queen h4. My attack keeps going. I'm looking at bishop h7. I'm looking at this move knight h7. This is actually my main idea. I want to go knight h7, trade off this annoying knight, and then my queen is gonna have like a field day with the black king. My opponent goes to the move pawn to g6. He's defending well. He's defending very, very well. He's still trying to keep it going. He's making the position a little bit more complicated for me. I can't just win on demand, and that's annoying. That's annoying, but I'm glad that my opponent's not not going to lose immediately. And I think for a little bit here, there's a couple moves to consider. First of all, I was thinking about the immediate sacrifice on g6 with the knight, which is an idea. The point is here, and I just thought probably white is winning. But I was like, why am I going to do all that? Why am I going to do all this idea with like knight g6 and taking on e6, where I'm probably winning, but I'm not entirely sure? Why can't I just play the move rook e3? And I was like, okay, rook e3 makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. The best move here is actually knight g4, which is actually a very, very classic move, forcing this move knight h5. And then I can even, I play this move f4, and it's actually just game over. Yeah, this is very, very nice. This is very, very nice. I didn't see this whole idea. I saw knight g4. I didn't see this move pawn to f4. I just thought that it made the most sense to go with this move rook e3, and my knight is already doing fine on the e5 square. My opponent goes knight takes e5. Makes a lot of sense. I play the move d takes e5. Of course, rook takes e5 would be a lot worse. Now my opponent probably can even take on c3. Yeah, this position's already worse for white. But pawn takes keeps the initiative alive. It keeps everything going. Now the rook can still float over to the h file, which is where I want it. Knight h5. And I find this very, very nice move. This very, very nice move. And this is kind of part of why I play this move rook e3. I didn't know it at the time when I played the move rook e3, but this is part of why rook e3 is so good, because now I can play this move bishop e2, and look at the geometry here. Look at the geometry here. I keep my rook above my bishop, so that now when I play bishop e2, my rook is already in the game. Plus, my rook already defends the pawn on c3. It's very, very nice, very, very nice, and black's position simply falls apart. Black has to play this move pawn to f6, which is a move I think makes a lot of sense. The computer line is just sack everything and try to survive somehow, but I mean, this is more like admitting defeat to me. I don't think I would play this in a game. I don't think my opponent would play this in a game. So instead, pawn to f6 makes a lot of sense, keeping everything alive. E takes f6, queen takes f6, and I simply take the pawn on e6. And it seems like black is going to be falling apart. My opponent was obviously counting on some play over on the queen side with this move queen takes c3, which does look a little bit scary and is probably black's last hope, but it is simply lost at the end of the day. There's not much black can do at this point, and I found the very nice move, the very, very simple and easy move, rook f1. And there's actually no counterplay. There's actually no counterplay on that side of the board. You can't play rook c4. Probably you still have to. This is probably one of the best moves, but I can simply take, and the attack continues on with now this rook potentially getting into the game as well. Instead of doing something insane like that, my opponent plays move bishop f7, but this move is honestly equally insane because now I'm getting rid of one of his defenders, I'm getting my pieces into the game, and it's going to be checkmate in just a few moves. Knight takes f7, king takes f7.